to strap in and get ready. The leaders in NRL Supercoach are incoming. Bringing you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and climb up the rankings. You're now listening to the Insight NRL Show with your hosts, Brain, Mattrix, and Whisperer.
Yeah, g'day guys, and welcome back. You're watching the Insight NRL Show, and we're going deep into the fullback position as it's a final position deep dive as well for the preseason. We've gone through nearly everyone, but we left fullback to last because it is probably the one that has a little bit of variety, but it's one of the highest upside positions as well. So I'm looking forward to this one. I'm your host, the SC Brain, and the SC Mattrix and the SC Whisperer are with me. Mattrix, how was work today, mate? Last day of the month? You seem to be on a bit of a high this Arvo.
Oh, mate, I tell you what, when my kid woke up at 3:30, I was just charged for the day ahead this morning. So, you know what? A nice, quiet 3 hours of the Wiggles this morning just to ease me into my day. And then, I was ready for the day ahead after that and about 5 coffees and 2 Vs.
Yeah, you'd need every single one of those, wouldn't you? How you going, Josh? No Wiggles for you, I'm assuming.
No. I'm a bit like Pete Murray, though. I've seen better days. I am very, very crook and have been for a little bit, but fullbacks will cheer me up. Last couple of, obviously, we went through a really, really dark stretch of hookers, front row forwards, and then probably halfbacks where it was very grim to talk about, but there's a little bit to talk about in fullback, which is nice. Obviously, yeah, the biggest upside and most important position to get right.
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of relevant, or I won't say lots, but there's a few relevant options here that you could justify it starting with the majority. So we'll talk through all of those. But before we do, guys, the show is brought to you by The Standard Squeeze and Ryan from Astute Newstead. Make sure to hit subscribe and like if you haven't yet. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And hit follow and review if you are listening to us on audio, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. I don't know, you pick. We're probably there somewhere.
Audible? I think we're on Audible.
Yeah, we're on Audible too. Yeah, good shout. I think people go there to get their audio books, though. I don't think they're listening to us on Audible.
I like a good romance novel.
Yeah, good. Guys, we've got an unlimited league this year. We are about 1,100 members in as well, so take on the community there. The code is 777-141. 777-141. That's the league code. It doesn't cost a thing to come in and give it a go. Take us on. We've got a Supercoach Champions ring for the winner of that league, and also an $80 prize pack from the Standard Squeeze for the weekly winner. So the weekly highest score. So jump on in. If you want to get your own Supercoach Champion ring, you can get one at supercoachchampion.com as well. Now, boys, we should jump into the most owned. We'll talk about the 10 most owned first. And the 10 most owned are brought to you by our Insight Unlimited. So, guys, for less than 50 cents a week, Insight Unlimited gives you everything that we have to offer from Insight Fantasy Sports. It's our final teams, our weekly trades, our captains, exclusive Q&As. You can ask us anything that you want to know about your team, about our trades, captains, every single week. Hot off the press team news as it comes through, all the injury news and much more. And not to mention, it's not just NRL. You've got AFL, NRL, BBL, and NBL, all 4 sports, all 4 disciplines. Get inside our minds, and it's just $25 for the full year. All you need to do is jump into the Discord and join the Discord to get involved. Now, lads, we should start with the most obvious, the most owned player. It's Kalen Ponga, Josh, at 892K, 34.6% owned. I'm kind of surprised that it's that low, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, I think it probably just comes down to how many other options there are. Like, we're probably looking at, I'd probably say 9 genuine gun options, and there's not that many obvious out-and-out guns in other positions. Center wing was dominated by 2 or 3 guys, halfbacks 2 guys, hookers 1 guy, front row forwards 4. So fullback's probably the place where it's going to get distributed the most. But in saying that, yeah, Ponga averaged 103 when he was back at halfback. Back from 5'8" at fullback goal kicking. Obviously, on that magical run. I don't expect him to hit 100 plus average, but we saw against the Raiders in that trial there. Doesn't need much to I don't think. Sorry, not the Raiders. We saw in the trial. It doesn't need much to really break a game open. He's the focal point of the attack. Everything rolls through him. Even better if the Knights line up with Cogger, because they're going to have 2 sort of more natural halfbacks slash playmakers, and it's going to give Ponga license to sort of flow both ways.
Yeah, free him up and take away the kind of force of creativity away from him and just let him run the ball, which is obviously his natural game. Mattrix, I'm assuming that Ponga's been in your team. I think majority of the time we've seen Ponga as a fullback one in most drafts so far. Do you agree with Josh on this one?
Yeah, I do. You know what's crazy? At times last year, he was in the 400s. He was 440K at one stage last year and touched 1 million. I don't know if I've ever seen that big of a change in a year, really. It was, at least not out of like a genuine cheapie. Like, I don't know. I just can't see a world where his upside, and like 35% of people own him, and I'm presuming there's a lot of serious super coaches. But as somebody that didn't always have KP last year, I started with him, got burnt, brought him back, traded him out when I thought it was at a high. I don't think I can not own him.
And there's a lot of questions, isn't there, around players like, oh, they're a hard watch if you don't own. I think we've said multiple times through the podcast so far that in the preseason anyway, that he's one of those guys you have to watch through the slits of your fingers if you don't have him. Your Clearys, your Hines, even Harry Grant, one of those guys that just can score 130 and ruin your week. But I tell you what, KP, when you look at the scores that he racked up last year, comfortably the best player in the competition. I think when you look at maybe round 11 onwards through to round 26, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600s in there. There's 4 90s. So that's 10 scores above 90 in his final 16 games, which is just insane.
After the move from 6 to fullback, he had one game of 47, but apart from that, the next lowest was a 77.
Wow.
And it was 77 to 180, and nothing in between. So, nothing below. Like, it was just ridiculous. Like, he went on that amazing run just after Origin up until the end. He had 180 against the Bulldogs, 137, 96, 122, 121. And that was all in 5 weeks. And really nice time zone.
That movement from 6 to fullback gave me movement from 6 to midnight. Like, it was sensational.
It's hard. It's going to be hard not to own him. And look, he's got the goal kicking again this year. And I could see the argument or understand the argument maybe if Hastings took the goal kicking back or something like that. But, mate, like when he took the goal kicking, it was just the easiest decision to make, especially with the amount of points that Newcastle were putting up last year.
Well, that's the thing. Like, are we concerned with some Knights regression? Because it's coming. It has to. It can't maintain what it was. Are we worried about some regression?
Look, for me, yeah, I'm worried about it. But look, I think at the worst case, maybe Ponga suffers maybe a 5-point regression. I don't see him becoming that bad that he ends up averaging 65 for the year. Do you agree, Matty?
Like, if we're getting people like Appy because we're excited they're goal kicking, it's hard to look past a Ponga. Like, I don't see us making lots of money out of getting Ponga. I don't see us making any money out of getting Ponga. But I think, like, where you like to make money in your positions, I don't think that's in fullback this year.
Yeah, that's like you just want them to not lose money, because then you can just rotate based on matchups, and that's the key thing. I mean, the amazing thing was he averaged 50 points in 2022, and obviously had a 37-point increase. Had a 1.23 ppm, which is insane for someone that played 70 minutes a game. That was the thing. He only averaged 71 minutes a game last year, and that does come down to that 2-point game he had in round 2 versus the Tigers. So, yeah, mental. 72% of scores over 60, and that included, only 2 scores above 60 when playing at 5/8. Then when he moved back, he only had 1 game under 60. So it was ridiculous. Finished the year strong. Finished the year with a 3-round average of 3-round average of 99, the 5-round average of 108. The best season we've seen by KP. Won the Dally M, and just overall unreal.
Yeah, way too good not to own. And yeah, there will be some regression, but I still think he's going to be in the thick of things. I think he's worth paying 900K for. So it's fair to say we can probably move on from Kalen Ponga at 34.6% owned for a reason. Now, the next one's an interesting conversation. He's the second most owned fullback, Ryan Pappenhausen. 645K, 21.3% owned. Are we looking at, from Pappy, maybe more of a case of cash being king here, Mattrix, in comparison to all the other 800 plus guns?
Yeah, like when we're looking at the top 10, and I don't want to spoil it, like there's only 2 guys cheaper than Ryan Pappenhausen out there, and the pedigree is there. Yeah, I suppose you can spend that 200K doing a lot of other things. I'm just super worried about how much footy Ryan Pappenhausen's played in the last fair while.
Yeah, look, he's had a horrid run of injury, the poor guy. I'd just love to see him play a full year of footy. I don't have any expectation at all. I just think as a fan of the game, regardless of where you're from or who you follow, I think it'd just be good to see Pappy play a full year. And if he gets a full year under his belt, he's going to be a guy that you own at some point throughout the season. At some point. Only 89 points last year, and he played the last 2 games of the season. So obviously wasn't an option last year, and that's why he's heavily discounted at what was it, 645,000. Yep. Josh, we had eagle eye, hawk eyes on this guy if he was going to get that kicking tee out and take the kicking tee, didn't we?
Yeah, obviously didn't work out the best. I think he will goal kick, but it's just a case of sort of when. You have to look back to 2022 for probably a sample size to look at him, and he was incredible, averaged 90 points a game. That included that heartbreaking 34 in 20 minutes against the Raiders, where he had his obviously fractured knee. I know that game all too well because I captained him, and his season was over then. But before then, I mean, 107, 193, 155, 107. Like, Pappenhausen has probably the second best ceiling of any fullback in the game for Supercoach. And I think that without the goal kicking as well. And if it wasn't for his draw, he'd be 100% in my team, because I think for what you get for Pappenhausen, for what you're paying, it's just simply absurd. 71, 79, 90 were his last 3 full seasons in terms of, averages. In saying that, though, obviously a concern, 17, 13, 12 are his matches played in the last 3 years. I'm not looking at 2023 because it's too small. But yeah, has basically only played, 14, 27. He's only played like 35 games in 4 years. So the footy is a concern. Even average minutes per game, 79 in 2020, and then only averaged 60 minutes a game in 2021, and then obviously only averaged 71 in 2022. The concern for him is fitness, but I think if you're happy to look past the draw, he has got the second most upside and the cheapest price out of any of these gun fullbacks.
We haven't talked about the draw. Now, the Storm draw is tough. When you look at the start of the year, now you'd look at the opposition, and I think they play 4 of the top 5 least conceded Supercoach scoring teams in the competition in the first 5 rounds. Now, the one thing we haven't really spoken about too much is the fact that a lot of these games are at Amy Park. I think they've got 3 out of their first 5 games at Amy Park. It might even be more. So, when we look at that, they play better in Melbourne for obvious reasons. But, I mean, is the draw that tough, Matty? Like, are we looking at this draw going, yeah, he's really going to struggle for attacking stats? Or do we just think that Pappy's going to get his own?
I think he will struggle. And it's sort of a mix of the draw doesn't add up. He's coming back from major injury. He's not goal kicking. Like, there's just too many red flags. And I love Pappenhausen, like one of the most exciting players to watch. But they do give us trades. And if we have to go down from one of these other elite guys that we've got because Ryan Pappenhausen's that much better for 200K cheaper, I can do a lot of things with 200K in 3 weeks.
We've been looking at Harry Grant down to Robson, down to Appy, down to Jacob Little we started to toy with. These kind of options where you're freeing up 200K. And I mean, going from a Turbo, Walsh, Latrell, Drinkwater down to a Pappenhausen would be much easier to stomach than going from a Harry Grant down to a Reece Robson, per se. Yeah. So is there any justification to make that move, Josh?
The quality drop-off in other positions is far greater from the top option to them. Like, is the drop-off from KP to Ponga is the drop-off from KP to Pappenhausen that big? Like, is it 40 points? Probably not. In saying that, though, Penrith in round 1 were the best Supercoach defensive team. The Warriors in round 2 were the 5th best team. The Knights in round 3, which is the 6th best team. The Buy in round 4. The Broncos in round 5, who were the 2nd best. I mean, the Bulldogs at home could be an absolute massacre, and the fact that you're not going to own him for that at Amy Park at 6 o'clock on a Friday is going to be hard to watch. And then you got the Roosters at Allianz, the Rabbitohs at Amy Park, and then it opens up nicely in round 9 with the Titans, Sharks, Eels, Manly, and then the Buy in 13. But it's just there's like one good game that I'm looking at in that first 7 weeks, maybe 2 if you look at the Knights game in round 3. But apart from that, yes, it does play at Amy Park. I think if you had the goal kicking, I'd look at it more because that's, in a Storm side that can attack, that's an extra, potentially, 4 or 5 tries a game, which is, 16, 20 points. And without that, it probably takes your ceiling from like an 80 or from 100 to down like to an 80. I think it will improve over the season, but yeah, that 35 games in 4 years is the main concern. It's not like we're getting Pappenhausen at 400k.
Yeah, definitely not. And I know, speaking as a male with a child, 6 p.m. Amy Park Friday night, not a problem. Won't be watching it anyway because the kid will be in the bath or having dinner or something's going to be going on. I always miss the 6 p.m. game. It's a big gripe from me. So anyway, I'll watch it on replay.
And that's 5 p.m. on Queensland. I haven't even made it home to the kid yet.
Yeah. Guys, let's move on from Pappy. The next 4 guys we're going to talk about in what we call the premium segment. So we won't touch on them too much now, but we've got Tom Trbojevic, 833k. He's 18.2% owned, so pretty close to Pappy in terms of ownership. We've got Reece Walsh at 813k, 14.3%, so 4% less. Then we've got Latrell and Drinky. Latrell at 789k, 8.1% owned, and Drinkwater 851 at 7.4. So some interesting pods in this mix. We will hold on these guys and we'll go into a bit more depth very soon when we talk about the premium options. But the 7th most owned, Mattrix, I might even throw it over to you. I'm not sure I can say it.
Look, this is what I came here for, a 20-minute discussion about Blake Taff. Look, the fullback for the surging Canterbury Bulldogs, led by one Maxwell King there in the front row. Everyone's a massive fan of the go forward that the Canterbury Bulldogs are going to have, and they think a bit of creativity will come from Blake Taff at the back. What do you fellas think?
No, go on, Josh. I can't even talk about it.
I'm very unwell. I don't want to be spending more time in this podcast than I have to. Why the fuck are we talking? Why is Blake Taff in the run sheet? Like, what the fuck's going on? Like, seriously. No. If Blake Taff was 200k, I'm still not buying it. Like, fullback's the most important position to get right in Supercoach. It's just not Blake Taff, is it? Like, Turbo averaged 143 in 2021. I think it would take Blake Taff 6 games to get to 143 total points. So that's all.
Slander. Yeah. Thanks. And to be fair, he made himself onto the podcast. You got to mention, full credit to Blake Taff. He's a footballer and he plays in the NRL.
Yep. Good on him.
The relevance is probably goal kicking. Probably saw him pick up the tee in one of the trials and go, yeah, cool. Blake Taff, fullback, goal kicker. Great. Let's get him in. But they forgot to mention that he plays for the Bulldogs. And also Matt Burton can kick too. So I'd say Burton actually has the goal kicking. Yeah.
Small hands, he can't catch the ball. He's got bad feet, he can't really move, even though he's mobile. Doesn't really know what he's doing. Doesn't have a post move that he puts to memory that he can do 2 times in a row. He has no game whatsoever, plays no defense, doesn't have the heart, the passion, or anything that comes with it. And you're asking me whether they gave him.
So sorry, Blake Taff.
And to be fair, that is the first time Stephen A. Smith has made it onto the podcast as well.
There'll be plenty more this year.
Yeah.
Do you reckon Blake Taff is even the fullback in 4 weeks' time?
No.
6 weeks' time?
No. Well, I mean, Serraldo came out in press conference and Gus Gould has talked about it a fair bit too, that Stephen Crichton's injury during the preseason has basically kind of stunted their plans to have him start at fullback just due to workload reasons. So there's every chance Stephen Crichton's the fullback in 4 to 6 weeks' time. And Blake Taff's back playing Reggies. So
I mean, if they open up Supercoach for New South Wales Cup, we might be having a different story. But at this point, no. Like 4.5%.
I probably
That's
preferred. I don't know. There's a few options I'd prefer at New South Wales Cup level, to be honest.
Connor Tracy. Literally anyone else.
Blake Moser.
Yeah, he's a hooker. So
yeah, let's
different
move on
position.
from Blake Duff.
Let's talk Dylan Edwards then. 705k, 4.2% owned for fair reason. You know, Dylan Edwards is just meat and potatoes, isn't he? He scored, what did he score? 90 odd Supercoach points in the World Club Challenge. Like, you just know what you're going to get from him. It's going to be anywhere between 60 to 85, 90 points. He'll score a try, leads up well through the middle. Just a solid player with hardly any weaknesses, but is the upside really there, Mattrix, from a position that we're really looking for those 120 plus scores?
I mean, I'm going to get front row forwards that score the same every week. I'm probably going to get hookers that are going to score the same every week. If I start with Danny Levi, it's not going to be a lot, but it's still going to be the same every week. And I know what I'm gonna be in for. With Dylan Edwards, you know what you're going to get every week. But I feel like if you want to win your competitions in Supercoach, you probably need to go to one of those top 6 guys and hope that you get 2 of them that score the best. Dylan Edwards will score more than some of those guys on a weekly basis, but I think over the course of the year, you can never captain Dylan Edwards. Like, it's fine. That's where I sit with it.
300s last year, Josh.
Yeah, I was going to say he'll probably have the most or the second most total points behind probably Gutho.
Yeah.
And that's great for draft because you can be reliable. You know, he can get you a 70 average. But in Classic, he's only had 2 scores of above 120 in the last 3 years. So, yeah, obviously, probably one of the best fullbacks we'll talk about in terms of, you know, footy, but just doesn't have that big ceiling that we need him to have. I said he had 2 scores above 120 in the last 3 years. Both those came last year. So it just shows you he doesn't have a ceiling. And yeah, I mean, ultra consistent, you know, you won't get a bad game. He's got, you know, tons of base, but just, yeah, he's probably the third option in his side. And you don't want that when you're paying 700k.
And he's definitely improved. I mean, we look at last year and even the year before, like 1,460 points, 1,589. Like he's averaged 67 and 69 the last 2 years. So like, it's solid. You know, and if he falls to you in draft, you take him. But when you've got Turbo, you've got Walsh, you've got Ponga, you've got even Drinkwater. Like the ceiling on these guys is 120 plus. I'm very interested to see when we talk about the other guys, what they're kind of how many hundreds they're churning out, especially from last year. But yeah, I think he's just a guy that you don't start with. And if they have a nice run where Penrith's draw frees up a little bit, maybe he's an option then. But even so, I think you're probably outthinking the room, Matty, right? If you're looking at Edwards as opposed to the other popular options.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's this one's really interesting. 5th most owned fullback at the moment is Latrell Mitchell. He's 789k, 8.1% owned. I kind of want to skip to him because there's something about Latrell that's screaming undervalued at the moment, and he looked disinterested at the back end of the year when he came back from injury. He then looked disinterested in the Indigenous All-Stars game. Are we just going to kind of fade this bloke and he's going to ruin us to start the year, and anybody who jumps on him is going to have a free ride to top place? Like, something's telling me that he's going to pop off this year.
Yeah, I mean, he could. He's one of the most talented players in the world. But I haven't seen anything yet. And I know it's just trials footy, but I thought he would have been in and around that All-Star game, being the captain of the team. I know he got a little banged up. I thought he would have been a lot better. And in my head, I was like, Latrell, you could talk me into taking you here in Supercoach. And yeah, he just didn't do anything that's making me say, just wait 5 weeks. And the Rabbitohs draw isn't fantastic either.
Yeah, good point. Draw's shit. But we know what Latrell can do, Josh. Like, has there been any sort of temptation for you to pick up Latrell to start the year just because he's underpriced in a pod?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely temptation. I've looked at him. it's just the draw putting me off. He was hampered with injuries last year. Was very vocal on his treatment from medical staff with his injury, and we saw that in his average. I mean, averaged 82 in 21, 85 in 22, and then down to a 77 last year. And we're talking like it was a crap year for Trell. He still averaged 77 points, and I think he's only got room to grow. I think he's one of the most intimidating fullbacks to watch if you don't own. And the draw, he is pretty much fixture proof. It's just with Trell, we know about his tendencies, and I don't want to slander him too hard, but Trell's a guy that I just want to get my eyes on first and see where he's at with his involvement before I take the plunge. But yeah, there's definitely a world where I have looked at him, and I will probably be owning him at some stage this season. We've spoken about that South run, and it gets golden from about round 9. So, AJ at a cut price. Hopefully Trell starts slow and him at a cut price as well. And yeah, there's definitely a world where we run, Pappenhausen and Trell by like round 9.
Yeah, when the draw frees up. I mean, we look at the draw last year and his scores last year against those better teams, and he's still scoring 60 plus against them more often than not. I mean, 73, 62, and 66 to start the year, and we're looking at the Sharks, Panthers, and then the Roosters were considered tough matches to start the year. He scored 102 against Penrith. And then he went on that massive run where he scored 300s in a row against Bulldogs, Dolphins for obvious reasons, and then backed it up against the Panthers. He scored 96 against the Broncos as well. So I would argue he's a big game player, a guy that just takes it, he's got a chip on his shoulder when he goes out and he plays against those better teams. So, I mean, the argument could potentially be that the better the team, the better Latrell we're going to get turn up, the more effort areas we're going to see from him, the more following up through the middle. We know he's not that guy to be sweeping out the back and doing a ton of running. He picks his moments when he wants to get involved. And, I mean, I can't, if somebody sent me their team and they said, hey, I'm starting with Latrell Mitchell, I'd be like, yeah, cool. That's probably not a bad shout, not a bad risk to take at 8% ownership.
Especially at 8% ownership. That's the thing. That's the beauty with fullback is there's so many good options that a lot of them are under-owned. And Trell is the kind of guy that would not surprise me if he scored 130 in Vegas. Like, it's just the occasion, we know that he loves it. He loves to be the focus point in the media and center of attention. And it would not surprise me if he scored 130 in Vegas, like one bit.
Yeah, 100%. There's another guy, it wouldn't surprise me if he scored 130 in Vegas due to the occasion. We'll save him for a little bit later, though. But James Tedesco, I don't see him scoring 130 in Vegas, Mattrix. 707K, 3.8% owned. When's the last time we've started a season where Teddy's been under 10% owned?
Oh, if you're asking a genuine question, I have no idea. Like 6 or 7 years ago, probably. But realistically, like, he had a stinker of a year, and can we say that the Roosters were pretty ordinary last year? The Roosters were pretty ordinary last year.
Yeah, they were shit.
Yeah, he's had his lowest average as far as I can remember. I think he was in the 90s in 2020. There we go, 87 in 21, 79 in 22, and there's been a decline. I'm worried that the decline will keep going. Great pick in draft because he seems to still be there in the 2nd and 3rd round. Still at that price, I think I'll wait for him to go on a bad run and maybe downgrade somebody if I find myself in 15,000th or something and I need a pod and need to make a move. I don't need to own Tedesco to start. No
one really needs to own him. It's more, what can you do with the cash? People are punting on these guys like Pappy and Teddy and these underpriced guys that have the pedigree because they want to free up the 200K that they could use elsewhere in their team. But it's just not a position that you really want to cut price in. Personally, that's my opinion anyway. I'm just going to pay up and get the premium option in the highest upside position, personally. And I mean, when he drops down, when you go from 95 average in 2020, gradually he's gone 87, 79, and then 69.
Giggity.
Like, when you're dropping down that far, I had to use the soundbite, sorry. 95 to 69 in 3 years. Are we going to start to see, is it Father Time catching up, Josh? Are we starting to see maybe a natural decline from Teddy?
Yeah. In the last 10 years, he has a career average of 76.8. He's actually only ever gone over that 4 times. So, like, it's very inflated by, the big years in 20 and 21 being 95.2 and 86.7. And then obviously, the huge drop off. Look, I do expect he improves on the average, but I'm only thinking like maybe a point or two, like at best to like 71, 72. Apart from that, I've got no interest until I can see more. He's 31. He is getting on in age. Last year, he was probably questioned the most in his career in terms of like what he offers to his club side, but also his representative sides, his state and his country as well. I do expect a little bit of bounce back. He's come out and said he's trained probably the best he has in the last couple of years. And since 2017, Tedesco has ranked second, first, third, 10th in terms of fullbacks. So obviously a huge drop off last year, but I also think it's the rise of other options. Like I said, since 2017, he's been a top 3 fullback and then 10th. And that was only averaging 69. So I think it's the rise of just other options, center wings that can do what he can't do in terms of ceilings as well. He did look good in the trials, but I would need to see more. I mean, it's the reason why we haven't looked at Brandon Smith. The Roosters draw is just not good at all.
And I mean, we're steering away from Supercoach a little bit and talking more rugby league, but it seemed like Teddy kind of handcuffed his outside backs last year. He tried to do a little bit too much, held the ball a little bit too much, there wasn't really much opportunity for his wingers. We saw a little bit of a downturn in their scoring as well. So, I mean, I feel like with Manu roaming and then with Teddy trying to do his thing, they kind of contradict each other. So it'd be really interesting to see how that plays out this year as well.
I think Teddy just needs to have a bit of a mental mind shift. Like, he is still great. He's still a great fullback, still a great ball player, but he's no longer 27, 28, where he can cut back in and just beat 3 or 4 guys, like with pure strength. Like, he probably just needs to realize that his best attribute is ball playing, and the fact that he still has some name value, so defenses are still going to hone in on him. And you've got a great backline. Like, you've got a great backline. Use it. You've got halves that will give you the space that you need. And just a bit of a change. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see his base drop off, but his creativity improved this year.
Yep. Yeah, good shout. Boys, the 10th most owned is actually really surprising, and I'm sure it's obviously people maybe new to the game or maybe that got a little bit excited about the fact that Jaden Campbell went down, and that's Keanu Keeney, 287k, 2.9% owned. Now, he's fullback only, and for obvious reasons, that's where you can pick him, right? If he was a centre wing duel, he'd be kind of popular to start the year, I would assume. But the fact that he's fullback only and having a guy he's kind of an unproven commodity. He's a bloody good player. But Mattrix, is there much logic, or do you want to maybe even explain the reason as to why we wouldn't consider a cheapie in that position unless it's last year's Jareen Bula as a rarity?
Yeah, in these high upside positions, I'm going to pay up. And maybe sometimes take a player at a little bit of a discount that I think is going to grow and make some money, and then we can move on from them later. But Dream Bull is the only time I've ever had a fullback cheapy viable that I can play. I would say outside of buys, I play my fullbacks every week.
None of us started with Dream Buller either. Like, we all had to watch him. We all had to watch him for 4 or 5 weeks to see what we were getting. And it's going to be, I guess it's hard for listeners because we've spoken, or I guess hard for new listeners because we've spoken all preseason about value and 10 to 15 points. And Keeney's probably got 30 points of value. Like, he's probably one of the most undervalued players in the game. But monster scores are so concentrated to the top 4 or 5 players at fullback that if you pay 892k for Ponga, priced at 89, and he scores 110, that's only 20 points. And Keeney could come out and score 70 points in round 1, and that's 40 points of value. But the extra value that you have for captaining Ponga from his score being a 110 to a 220 far outweighs the value that Keeney provides you. If all things go right, he scores 70. The monster scores that we see are so concentrated between maybe 5 or 6 names that it's just not worth thinking outside the box and picking elsewhere because attack is so rewarded in Supercoach, and attack flows through 5 of the most elite players in our game.
Yep. Yeah, well said. Good explanation. It's and the Bula move last year, like it made so much sense due to the break even and due to the amount of cash that you could have got on when he was on the bubble. So that's a bit of a no-brainer move to free up that cash. You know he was going to make 100K. And also, it freed up. A lot of people went from Reece Walsh to Jareen Buller, and I was one of those around that time of the season. You freed up like 400K to be able to get that and then use that elsewhere in bigger upside positions like 2RF.
Well, you freed up and then made it too.
The thing with Buller is he started at 200K in round 8. Like, he had some good scores, but he didn't rise. Like, he only rose 150K in 5 weeks. Like, it's not like he got out of hand. And that was the thing. Like, no one bought him sight unseen. Everyone waited. And you may have waited and after his big 100 against Manly in round 12, and you bought him against the Raiders when he scored a back-to-back 100s. And then that's when he exploded. But he was providing great cover. Like he wasn't good from rounds 8 to 11. Like, he scored 38, 60, 59, 45. Like, not good. And then it wasn't until over the bye period where, Turbo at that stage was ruled out for the season. People were still, umming and ahhing over Drinkwater because he had that lengthy suspension. He was only just coming back. Walsh was at Origin. Trell was at Origin, or he was injured. So there wasn't many options at the time. And Buller filled a hole there. But if Buller started the season in round 1, no one would have started with him. Because the risk that you take by saving yourself 600K at fullback is just not worth it. Like,
there was one player. Sorry, there was one player through Origin that you didn't mention there that was probably the saviour of all of our seasons. We'll talk about him very soon.
Yes, sure. But yeah, like the upgrade from, like, if you have 600K because you don't go with Ponga and you go with Keeney, like, what does it get you? It gets you a JMK to a Grant, which is maybe 15 points. You're never going to captain Grant. It maybe gets you a Max King to a Payne Haas, and that nets you maybe 15 points, and you're never going to captain them. All of a sudden, you've got 300K left in the bank, and you're like, oh, I'd like to hold that for what, 30 points for 2 guys you're not going to captain? Like, yes, it sounds great. He probably has the most value out of the guys we'll talk about today, but just spend up at fullback, and that's why we've said it all preseason.
Yep. NRL fantasy is different though, and I just like to throw it out that, like, if you have NRL fantasy where you can have 3 guys that play wingers and fullbacks, Keeney's a lock. Like, if we had extra bench spots for fullback, we would all own Keeney. We would have 2 guns and somebody that you can make money out of. Just the way that Supercoach is set up, it's not set up for Keeney. But there's definitely other fantasy formats that Keeney's very viable.
But also in fantasy, Keeney may get 3 or 4 price rises. In Supercoach, he may get 1, and that's it. Like, fantasy has the one game price change, and they had the buy in round 2. And then if JT's back in round 5, you've got 3 price rises out of Keeney. In Supercoach, you get 1, and it's not even going to be that good. So yeah, for me, it's just a no-go.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
It's why I guess someone like a Tuapiki from the Warriors is going to be much more desirable, because he has the center wing duel. He has no buy in the first 3 rounds, so he might get 2 price rises. But he also has a center wing availability, which Kenny doesn't. So yeah, stay away.
Yeah, good shout. All right, let's move on to the Primos. They're brought to you by the Standard Squeeze, guys. If you are sick of breaking glass bottles, sinking triple shots, beer's going warm, coffee's getting cold in the morning, the Standard Squeeze have got you covered to give you everything that you need to drink responsibly, but also conveniently. Food-grade quality plastic with their Standard Squeeze bottles, of course, as well. So you can go to their website, thestandardsqueeze.com. You can use the code INSIGHT15 to get yourself 15% off everything in store, thanks to the Standard Squeeze. We spoke about Kalen Ponga. Let's move through him. He's a bit of a lock. I think people know how we feel about him. But Scott Drinkwater, we haven't dived deep into him. And he's an interesting one because whilst he is, he's 7.4% owned, which is still what we would consider a pod under 10%. But I don't know whether I should ask you, Josh. You've had some pretty strong feelings about Scott Drinkwater in the last couple of years. So maybe, Matty, do you want to give your thoughts first on Drinky, and then Josh can kind of pile on at the end?
So, Josh, you went around last year, but I called Scotty Drinkwater Scotty Drink Bolter. He was elite. And watching the preseason, he was fantastic as well. That cutout ball that I saw him pass out to Felt the other day actually made me look at him again. I think I'm pretty set on a couple of guys, and maybe I'm still scarred by a couple of games that I've seen him score extremely low. Like, what was it, 2022? I think I was playing him at 5'8", and I think he scored a 12 once. Look, I am scarred from some things like that, but he seems to have shaken all that out last year. He was an absolute gun. And looking at the ownership stats, he's not just a gun, he's also a pod. And if you think that the Cowboys are going to be a lot better, it's mad not to look at Drinkwater.
Sure.
I'm
And Josh?
obviously still scarred because you call him Scotty Drink Bolter. I was Scotty Trapwater. His floor is just so shit. Like, that was my whole thing. Like, and I honestly thought I felt so justified in like the first 2 rounds because he scored a 59 in round 1, where I think he had 3 try assists, and then in round 2 he had 1 point after 70 minutes where he got sin binned. Like, he has a very poor floor, and that's what I was hedging my bets on. But Todd Payton just decided, we're gonna run everything through you. Like, we're just gonna do that. Because I remember in 2020, like, I was a huge Drinkwater fan. I am a huge Drinkwater fan from like a footy standpoint. But Todd Payton was insisting on playing Hamiso over Drinkwater. And I could just see that Drinkwater was better. And they finally gave him the start. And he was available at 5'8". And we all jumped on him and he was great. And then I just thought last year, like, if Todd Payton doesn't rate you that much, like, what's going to happen? And then they just decided to run everything through him. And, he sucked for the first 2 weeks. And then from there, it was just elite. Like, he had that stretch of like 6 weeks where he went 95, 117, 104, 95, 140, 173, 95, 122. And that was all in like 7 weeks. And my phone blew up with how many mentions I got. And I had to watch this every single week. And yeah, like, it's strange because he has probably the worst floor out of any of the players that we'll speak about today. But the Cowboys just kept attacking and they kept giving it to Drinkwater and he kept delivering. And then the question becomes, can he do it again? I know you said he looked great in the trial, and I'm not doubling down again on this year, but he had 3 try assists and scored a 66, like, in the trial. And that's the big concern with Drinkwater is he needs to have absurd attacking stats to have, an elite average. And can you see him having absurd attacking stats 2 years in a row? And I can't say no from what I've seen in the trial and from what I saw last year.
Yeah, he averaged 51 in create and evade last year. 51 points per game in
that's
just
huge.
like
Absolutely.
tackle busts, line break assists, that kind of shit. Like 25 base is pretty ordinary in comparison to the elite options in the competition at fullback. So yeah, and look, but I guess the one thing maybe people are considering here is that the Cowboys actually have a pretty nice run to start the year. It's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
Like, if you see on the screen here, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the Cowboys right at the bottom there. They've got the Dolphins in round 1, which is considered a good matchup considering the Dolphins conceded the I think in the top 4 most Supercoach points last year. They got a tough matchup against the Knights, but then they got the Dragons, then the Broncos. Then they've got a couple of really nice runs against the Titans and Para. So they've got 4 out of the first 6 rounds that are actually pretty advantageous. So, I mean, maybe that's what people are hedging on. They're hedging on him going really large in those 4 out of 6 matchups to start the year.
But doesn't he average like the same in base as, say, like a Kalen Ponga? Like, please correct me if I'm wrong. But isn't it something similar? It's just that
Ponga's still got the goal kicking to back it up and
true.
whatnot like that. So, like, that's the only, and that's the concerning thing with the non-goal kicking fullbacks is just the fact they don't have that safety. But I think, Drinky will do very much the same what he did last year. Maybe not to the heights of an 83, but if he finished the year with an 80, I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right. Let's move on to our boy, Tommy Trbojevic, Turbo. It's the reason we're here, really, isn't it? Because, I mean, one, we wanted to give Phil some entertainment tonight, and we know he'll enjoy this segment. But Tom Trbojevic has been pretty much in all of our teams from kind of the team picker. Am I right? Like, he hasn't come out of my team at all since the team picker opened.
There's been 2 players in my team that have not moved all preseason. One of them is Dylan Brown. One of them's Tom Trbojevic. Has not budged.
And it's funny, we were talking about base before. Turbo's base last year, I mean, it was an injury-affected year, so you probably have to go back a couple of years to get some accurate stats on that. But his base was 28. So it's not exactly like he's basing through the roof. But, like, you just know, when we go back to 2021, right, and we saw what we saw from him in 2021, I think he scored a million tries. He had the Dally M. He had 143 average in Supercoach, which is just unheard of.
I don't care what anyone says. Like Barber, Hayne, like I don't. It's just 2021 Trbojevic. Like I don't care if it's PVL ball or whatever. Like that was just the most dominant season you'll ever see, ever.
Yep.
He had a 1.87 ppm.
Yeah, that is insane. That is like Royce Hunt on steroids.
2 points a minute.
Craziness.
Fuck.
But I mean, even last year, right? Last year, he had scores to start the year of 97 and 103, then 106 in round 4. And then he also then got 165 and 126 before he was done for the year.
He averaged 97 if you take out like that weird hip pointer back spasm Fiago for 4 weeks. Like he still was elite last year too. And the thing with classic over draft is Turbo is a much riskier prospect in draft.
Yeah.
Because you are stuck with him. If he goes good, you're not trading him out, and if he sucks, no one's buying him. Like that's the dilemma with draft. But in classic, like he is a guy that will always give you points. His prices, like he's never going to drop to a 600k.
I mean, there's a reason you've kept him in your team the whole time, Matty. I mean, are you echoing what we're talking about here with this?
Yeah, like I don't have too much to say outside of the fact that it's your pick and draft, Josh. Don't have too much to say outside of the fact that, yeah, I just got Turbo in. I got Turbo in last year. Yes, I'm paying more than I did last year, but I still see that upside. And as Josh said, when he performed poorly, usually it was because of health. Health is always a concern, but in NBA fantasy, I say it all the time. I'm not drafting a guy because of health, because, you know, he could just have a fantastic season going forward. He could have a clean bill of health for the next 3 years, and he could touch $1 million again. And I paid $833. I'm going to be the happiest man alive. I'm going to be a lot happier than some of these guys. Like, not all of these 800k fullbacks can go up in price. There's going to be peaks and troughs. But I think Manly will be better than they were last year, and I think Turbo will be hopefully healthier. If not, we just move on. It's just classic.
And also, like, he had a really injury-affected preseason last year as well. So this year is one of the first years for, I think, 2 or 3 years since he's had an injury-unaffected preseason where he's been able to get through the full preseason. He hasn't been limited by injury. He hasn't been going through rehab group. He's been training the whole time. So, yeah, for me, he's a lock. I think it's a pretty easy decision there. We just know what he's capable of, and we know that if Manly are going to be good, it rests on the back of Tom Trebojevic's shoulders. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch, but I'm pretty keen to just go Ponga and Turbo. I haven't really looked anywhere else.
There's no one that will touch the upside that he has. Like no one, and it's not close. Like it's frightening how good he is in terms of Supercoach. And I'm not even just talking about like 2021 because it was an anomaly. It's so fun. Like if you go on NRLstats.com and look at his average score per game, like the graph is so distorted because of 2021. It looks like everything else was terrible, but still averaged 82 last year. And like I said, that was actually closer to a 97, 98 because he had that sort of 5-week period where he was playing through a back spasm and hip pointer weird situation.
Funnily enough, we were talking and kind of ripping in a little bit when we're talking about injury-riddled players as well in Pappenhausen. Turbo's played 52 games in the last 5 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, the huge thing is, and this is like the weird thing though, is people are off Turbo, and Ponga's ownership is double, and people are off Turbo because he's injury prone, and people forget that KP was genuinely on the brink of retirement last year, with all the head knocks. So I don't think you can correlate, and that's the thing. In Classic, we get 40 trades, you use them. In the last 3 years, in non-injury affected games, his score breakdown looks like this. Between 0 and 39, 2. Between 40 and 59, 3. Between 60 and 89 is 8 games. Between 90 and 99 is 3 games. Between 100 and 129 is 6 games. Between 130 and 179 is 6 games. And 180 plus is 5 games. He has had, what is that? He's had, in the last 3 years, he's had 18 games over 100 points, and he's only played 50. So 40% of his games are 100 plus? Like, come on.
You know what? We've talked captains. We've talked about Tin List Tuesday. We've done the Vegas edition already. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to chuck a sneaky VC on Turbo this week, running at Josh. You sent this in the chat. Who's he running at? What's the edge that he's running at this week?
Ilias, Arrow, Kenner, and Gagai. Like,
Jesus.
I've still got the VC on him. I know you guys have talked a lot about Ponga.
I'm keen on
Braino made and Braino made fun of me in the Discord, I think, this morning on it. But I'm not sure I can look past a Turbo VC. As good as Ponga is, earlier on in the week, let's just go VC Turbo.
I didn't make fun of you because you had VC on Turbo. I'm all aboard that. I think it was something there was some Royce Hunt slander going on in the Discord, and I wasn't having it. So that's what I was on you about.
Braino and I also need to consider the fact that we're going to be in a room with about 100 Supercoach players on Sunday. And if we don't have some kind of captaincy strapped to Turbo and he goes ballistic, it's going to be a fucking very depressing car ride home. Because yes, it's nice to own him, but if he goes for 150 and you have no piece of the captaincy pie, grim.
Nobody's going to be talking to each other anyway. They're all just going to be looking at their phones.
No, we're a social bunch, mate. Don't you worry. Let's move on to the second half of the Primos, guys, and they're brought to you by Ryan from Astute Newstead. If your home loan rates are above 6.2%, maybe you want to buy your own first home or you want to buy a new home, you can reach out to Ryan at Astute Newstead for an obligation and cost-free inquiry. You can go to his link tree. It's in the description below. It's Hammond's Home Finance, and you can use the code INSIGHT to let him know that we sent you. Won't cost you a thing. We've most of us have worked through him personally. I'm working through him at the moment, and Ryan's a quality guy that'll basically take away all the guesswork for you. He'll do all the hard yards. He'll talk to the big banks. You don't have to worry about all the negotiations. He'll look after the best rates for you and save you some cash. So hit him up there, and the link is in the description. Let's talk Reece Walsh, boys. He is also another popular kind of Vegas pick, I guess we're saying, and Mattrix, it'd be remiss of me if I didn't let you have a little spiel on Reece Walsh, because, mate, Broncos supporter, go on.
He's rocks and diamonds, like, really, and has that really low base that you can expect from somebody like that. I know that you guys are all expecting me to praise Reece Walsh, but Reece Walsh isn't Scott Drinkwater in the way that he has a better team around him than Scott Drinkwater. Like, we can win games with him scoring 50, which worries me when it comes to owning Reece Walsh. Yeah, I was super excited that he came back to the Broncos last year. I was definitely super excited at the price that he came back to the Broncos in Supercoach. And yes, I owned him last year, but he did kind of what I expect him to. He can be an absolute pocket rocket and throw up 80 points in 10 minutes, or he can finish the whole game with 22 and still playing 80 minutes. And I'm not sure that there's any other player in the league that can be as rocks or diamonds as Reece Walsh. So when you're looking at Supercoach, he can get sent to the sin bin because he's a hothead. That's -8. He definitely has an error in him. That's -2. He kicks the ball in play, often kicks it dead, can kick it out on the full. But he can also, just score 80 points in 10 minutes. I'm not sure anybody else can score 80 points in 10 minutes the way that Reece Walsh can, but I'm not sure anyone can be out there for 80 minutes playing fullback and score 20 either. You've got to be a sucker for punishment and also just love a risk to have Reece Walsh.
I never owned him last year, and the reason for it was his very first game for the Broncos against the Cowboys in round 2. He finished on 105 points, but after 73 minutes, he was on 11. He piled on nearly 100 points in 8 minutes, and that's what he can do. Like, he is the most scary player to watch as an owner, because look, there's no stat for it, but he would have to have the highest concentration of points per minute in terms of like he will put on 80 points in 10 minutes and do nothing else. He only had 2 scores above 120, and they were in the 2 last games of the season. So the ceiling probably isn't quite there, and that's just due to everyone else. Well, lack of base, but everyone else around him. His base is only 20. His scoring was only 9. Obviously, a huge create, huge evade, which is what we expect from the modern day fullbacks. His percentage of scores over 60 was 68%, which is nice. But yeah, it's for me, I was just put off by the lack of consistent points for him. The anti-Cam McInnes, I guess you could say. There was no steady flow of that. But he's probably the game's most marketable player. His speed is rapid. Like, defensive edges are going to have nightmares just thinking about Reece Walsh and Ezra Mam. And yeah, I mean, now you got Selwyn Cobbo on the edge as well. So it's going to be really, really fun to watch, but I don't think I can go there from a Supercoach standpoint. I think for the same money that we pay, we can just get way better upside from Trell, KP, Turbo, Drinkwater.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. And Mattrix said it's a roller coaster. You know, if you own the guy, you're going to see him on 10 and then he's going to finish on 100. You look at his first 6 rounds last year and it went 105, 95, 84, 99, 86, 101. So you can't really ask for a better start. And I think he was priced around that 600 mark to start the season last year. It's just
550.
Yeah, 550. So like when you look at that, like the only reason people weren't probably starting with him was the fact that they were on a bye in round 1. He missed round 1, and then
he was suspended because he's on
right.
the nose beers. I'm pretty sure in Thailand or Bali or somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
That's my fullback.
But Turbo was 550k last year. That's probably why people didn't look at him.
Yeah. Do we worry that it's that Reece Lightning can't strike twice, or are you just confident in the kid's ability that he's fine?
I think he's fine. I don't have a concern. He actually had higher create and evasive average last year than Ponga. But in saying that, we're taking in Ponga's HIA game where he had played 2 minutes for 1 point. So that probably evens that out. But in saying that, yeah, you can do much worse than Reece Walsh. But is Vegas, this first Vegas game, are people going to maybe be disappointed, or are you feeling like the stage is set for a Reece Walsh masterclass?
I mean, if it was round 4 and it, got a bit under his legs, I think that it would be great. But then when he played the Baby Cowboys the other day, they sort of played him in this ball playing, even the kicker role, kicked a 40-20, absolutely looked like the best man on the park. So he should have been. To quote Josh, he was playing children. But look, he probably looked like the player that had the least rust, if it makes you feel any better going into Vegas, than maybe anyone I saw over the trial period.
Yeah. Look, take it with a grain of salt, really, Trials.
I mean, he still scored 111. You can only play what's in front of you, but it's definitely good signs for Reece Walsh truthers. And yeah, if you don't own, I don't think there's anything scarier than seeing him just sitting behind Reynolds and just hitting top speed and just putting defensive edges on an absolute fucking ice rink. So I'm going to be petrified not owning Reece Walsh. But yeah, if you own him and you send me your team, I can't tell you to take him out because he is just that good.
Yeah, nice little pod. Let's talk about the man that saved our origin period last year. In Mr. Clinton Gutherson. What a pick. If you picked him up, so it would have been round 15. So obviously round 13 for that first major buy, he scored 81 last year. Up until then, he was probably averaging around that maybe 65, 70 mark. And then he proceeded to go buy round 14. Then he went 138 against the Bulldogs, 132 against Manly, 119 against the Dolphins. Now, if that isn't one of the best buy period performances through that middle buy period, I don't know what is. And then he went 61 and 115. So, I mean, the guy was just elite when we needed him to be, and when people were picking him up, he performed. So, I mean, I guess the question mark becomes, can he Can he really maintain that for a full season? He is a top point scorer when we talk about fullbacks. If you're looking at draft, he's a great pickup because you know that he's not going to be, hopefully, not going to be picked for Origin. I mean, I'm sure he hopes so, but we don't. I don't know how much your heart was. I don't know how much your heart was broken as a Clint Gutherson owner in round 19 when Freddie decided he was going to play him off the bench for 7 minutes. But I'll tell you what, it broke mine. So, boys, any love for Gutherson? I mean, it's a draft conversation more so than a classic, but he will become relevant at some point during the year, surely.
I'm not keen at all. Like last year, he averaged 79, and I bought him the minute that Brown was suspended. And that goes hand in hand. I mean, average 79 last year, average without Dylan Brown was 103.3. So he was the best fullback in the comp. And it was for a decent sample size of about 8 weeks, but only averaged 70 with Brown back in the side. So probably overpriced by about 10 points. And yeah, I mean, I'm only looking at him if Moses and or Brown are out. But apart from that, I've got no interest and probably not even in draft. I just think he's going to get slightly overdrafted just based off averages and not, production.
Yeah, I'll just go fuck myself. I drafted him yesterday. So
if you can get him, if you can get him at the same spot you're getting Tedesco, like the back end of the second, then great. But it's more like top of second because all those gun fullbacks go early and people are sitting there, like especially someone that's like pick 8. They're just like, fuck, like, do I take Grant or do I take like Gutho to get a fullback? And like, I feel like he's just getting slightly overdrafted just based off the average, not the
that's
production. But if you can get him back into the second, of course, like same spot you're getting Tedesco, but I just don't think that's happening.
Yeah, that's fair. And also, I guess we're talking draw as well. Like when you're looking at draft finals or even head-to-head finals, the Eels have a pretty clear run. Tedesco is a guy that has a bye in the finals period for Supercoach, so there's things to weigh up in that. So, any love for Gutho, Mattrix?
Yeah, I don't know if you know this about me, but I can be arrogant. And I was arrogant enough to not own Gutho last year. I kept seeing him punching out these scores without deal bags, and I just kept fading. He can't keep doing this. He can't keep doing this. Parramatta suck. He can't keep doing this. And then he kept doing this. But I think
it's the Whisperer Reece Walsh syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. I got on Reece Walsh, but I didn't get on Gutho. Look, I think if Dillbags gets injured, say for 6 weeks, like he was out for 6 weeks, I will leave that there. Last season, I will look at Gutho, but yeah, right now, absolutely no chance of me having him in my team until it looks like he's not around in Origin time. Yeah.
This is a conversation for throughout the season when you're considering looking at him. When the Eels draw frees up, there's no way in the world you're starting with him. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And there's a time and place where you can own him with Brown and Moses, but he has to be, he's going to have to lose 130K for me to look at him during Origin, and the draw has to line up quite well. Like there's a lot of factors that are going to need me to take Gutherson at some point this season.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, there's not really many factors to take our last guy, Latrell Mitchell. Now, we can dive in a little bit deeper on him. We talked about him earlier, but, I mean, surely, is there any temptation? I know, Josh, you mentioned earlier that Latrell Mitchell's a guy that you're potentially looking at. Mattrix, what needs to change or what needs to happen in the first couple of weeks to go, all right, Latrell's coming into my team in round 2 or 3?
Turbo to get injured?
Can we not talk about that?
I was going to say him to slip in the shower.
Yeah.
Despite we saw videos of him running down the course though, like 24 hours before it.
Yeah, like realistically, I know that he's a lot different player to Turbo, but I'm just going to chase the points with Turbo. I think he does have a little bit higher upside. I think that Turbo can put away bad teams better than Latrell as well. But I do think that this is a guy that's matchup proof. And I do think I'll find myself owning him at times throughout the year. But it'll maybe be he has niggling injury, looks disengaged for 3 or 4 weeks, drops 100K. starts to look fit again, we get him again. He is the definition of peaks and troughs. Like when you have a look, last year he went 62, 66, 34, 67, and then 3 tons in a row. Like, you're talking
hard to
about riding
pick.
a roller coaster. Yeah. And like you're talking about riding a roller coaster with Reece Walsh. Like it's a roller coaster with Latrell too, but I feel like it's not even always factors in the game, which worries me in Supercoach.
Yeah, it's so nearly impossible to pick when he's going to go on one of those runs. Like I remember, I think it was 2 years ago when he came back from injury, and it was like mid-season or early season, and everyone was staying off Latrell, thinking, "Oh, maybe I'm not going to look at him," and people were a little bit scared off. And I ended up jumping on him that year, and I swear I don't remember the last time he scored a 90 or a sub 90 in that back end of that season. He just went on this magnificent run where anybody that owned him was probably finishing top 1K. It's just one of those weird runs. So if you jumped on him at the right time, you got it right. So I don't know whether there's anything else to add. And when we're talking fullbacks, is there anybody else, Josh, that we've missed, or anybody you'd like to kind of mention before we jump off?
I don't know. Normally our podcasts go for an hour and a half or so, so we've got 25 minutes. We can do more Blake Taff chat if you want. But I'm pretty.
What
good.
do you think of KO Weeks?
Oh yeah. Value definitely presents itself at fullback. No, I think that's sort of the core group. Fullback's not somewhere where you want to get too tricky.
Can I just quickly ask? We've had some questions in the Discord centered around: is there value in having a dual fullback? Do you want to kind of cover that? You're not going to use them, are you?
I mean, maybe during Origin, especially the Kiwi ones. But for now, like if Turbo goes down in round 1, I just move to Drinkwater. If Drinkwater goes down, I just move to Trell. And then like I'll look at Jules during Origin when like the elite guys get picked, but no, not right now.
No, and not for now because Sione for now is center wing only. So you're welcome.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, I'll let myself out.
And CNK doesn't have a CTW duel this year, which is very disappointing.
And like that's a lot of the appeal for Hammer for me, but it's a fullback that I can play in center wing, not a center wing that I have the flexibility to move back to fullback. Like, duels are great. I love them. But yeah, a fullback duel, you're never going to use it because I'm going to probably at some point hope my value's up there close to 2 mil at fullback. And it's not some, dual scrub.
Yep. Very well said. All right, boys, that will do. I mean, fullback, kind of simple, but I mean, there's a little bit more to it. There's a few more options that are relevant this year. So hopefully we've kind of spread them out a little bit for you and given you our thoughts. I think it's pretty clear that we're all on Kalen Ponga and Tom Trebojevic. So, I mean, there's our fullback team reveal right there. But, guys, make sure to hit like and make sure to hit like and subscribe. Obviously, if you like the content, we'll be coming to you live again to talk about the Vegas week just gone. We're going to be, Josh and I will be at the Star. Hopefully happy with our teams and happy with our choices for Vegas. We'll find out soon. But then we'll review the week on Tuesday and preview the second half of TLT for round 1. Guys, until then, thanks for watching. You've been listening to the Insight NRL show. We will see you next Tuesday night. Catch you later.
Cheerio.